Hey there, what's going on guys? Ash here, back again with another Radiant Black review. So Radiant Black issue 36 moves away from following Marshall and all those other characters as we're introduced to a brand new Radiant Yellow, as this issue is titled The Long Life of Radiant Yellow. And I just want to say the artwork for this issue, done by Stefano Simone, I do apologize if I butchered your name, is fantastic. The artwork here is amazing, and I loved it from start to finish. Once again, the artwork for Radiant Black does not miss, and seeing the artwork here, it looked freaking amazing. And even the story we follow in this issue is quite the emotional one, because right away when we're introduced to Radiant Yellow, we're attached to this character with their backstory, with what they're going through and stuff like that, as they're going through something very personal that everyone can relate to, whether you've been through that, whether you know someone who's been through that. It's a very relatable character, you could say, aside from the Radiant superpowers, but it's a very relatable character with what the situation has been. And I've known people who've been in this situation. I've talked to people who have been in that situation before. So let's start off with issue 36 of Radiant Black, Long Live Radiant Yellow. So this issue picks up right after the Catalyst War, and it's set in the past, and it happened 5 months ago right after the Catalyst War happened in Whiting, Indiana. And we follow our main protagonist of this issue, known as Nancy, a homeless woman down on her luck who's just trying to get by. And while scurrying through the rubble and the debris of what seems to be a donut shop, she finds the Radiant Yellow. So Nancy's just trying to get by with whatever she can do, from selling scraps, robot parts from the Catalyst War, just to get by. So you have her hanging out in the bar, she's talking to the barkeep and some of the people around the bar, and while she's having a conversation, she soon starts to trip out as she starts seeing flash forwards with what could happen to her in the future. And it's very vague, we don't know exactly what's happening to her within these little snippets. We just see her falling over, and we're unsure what the context is, but we find out what the context is later on in the issue. So after she leaves the bar at the end of the night, closing night, you see her trying to get by once again, and you then see the Radiant attaching itself to her, and she begins freaking out. So the next day, she ends up going to the doctors to get a medical examination, and the doctor does say she's perfectly fine, apart from the hallucinations. But Nancy explains by saying, look, there's a cliff, right? And after that, she can't really describe how she's feeling. But the doctor does say it could be depression. Have you tried our therapy app? And she says, well, I don't have a phone. And she's unable to get the help that she needs because the doctor does say that the clinic they've slashed the clinic's funding, so there's not a lot they can do for her. So there's not a lot the clinic can do for her. But as she's walking along the streets when she's leaving the clinic, she has this quote that I gotta say, it's pretty powerful, and I will say it's pretty true. And she says, if people cared more about people and less about money, then maybe. And then she doesn't really finish her sentence there because she says, hold up money. And this is when we see the Radiant effects come into play. But what she's saying here is kind of true. You know, if people cared more about people instead of money and stuff like that, they'd be able to help them get by in life and stuff like that, instead of, you know, money solves all problems or just money for a doctor's appointment. Like, if people actually listen to people, then, you know, they can help them out with their problems. So when Nancy says hold up money, you then see a vision of her robbing a bank. But you see all these different scenarios play out with the powers of the Radiant Yellow. So you see the first scene where she gets a gun from a gun store, she goes in to rob the bank, she like shoots it up in the air, and then right away she's shot. The second scenario, you see her driving away in the car, but the car then bursts into flames, so that scenario doesn't work out as well. Then you see the next scenario where you see her winning the lottery, but that scenario doesn't play out as well. But then again, you see all the other different scenarios where they don't play out as well, where all those scenarios she dies in. So again, you see the Radiant powers at play here. So on the next page, you then see the other barmaid seeing Nancy on TV, and she's using her Radiant powers to find lost items and lost pets and stuff like that to sort of cash in on the rewards. And this is how Nancy gets by moving forward for the next couple of months as she's slowly able to build herself back up with her radiant powers by using these powers to sort of look for things that are lost and found. So a few months have gone by and Nancy has managed to get herself a place, and it looks like she's doing pretty well for herself right now. But she then gets a visit from her sister, Frankie, and their relationship is not the best. It's been kind of rocky within the past couple of years, as Nancy believes that her sister never wanted to see her again. But she also makes the comment by saying Jonathan said that she was a bad influence on the kids and an embarrassment to their family. So you can tell there's an estranged relationship between Nancy and Frankie with sort of like, I guess, the different paths they went down in life, which is something that does happen between families here and there. Like, I'm sure everyone's probably heard that before from a family member, whether they're on a good terms relationship with them or a bad terms relationship with them. So the two of them soon decide to go looking for an object, and they go to one of the local tips or the dump. And while they're looking for one of the rings, they soon find it, and Nancy soon discovers that her sister is broke. And this is when she begins to crash out and starts freaking out that her sister only came to her for help because she needed assistance for the reward by finding the ring. And this is when, like I said, Nancy begins to freak out by saying, look, I wasn't worth it when I was homeless and I was at my lowest, but now you come to me when you're at your lowest and you need help. Because Nancy says that she needed her family, she needed her sister, and they weren't there for her. So the two have this massive argument with everything going on because, you know, people are struggling after the Catalyst War and everything that's happened, that they kind of have an argument. So Nancy walks away, and this is when you see the vision about to happen where she falls and hits her head and dies. But this time, the future has changed where her sister's able to save her at the last second and catch her. So the vision doesn't end up coming true thanks to Nancy's family being there for her. So it's a nice little moment between the two of them. So 1 month goes by, and what we get is we have Frankie narrating sort of the life of Nancy as she's hanging out with all the people that we saw at the start of the issue who are at the bar. And we get this really long dialogue. I won't read the entire thing. But while the narration is going on, you have these two sort of cars pull up the front of Nancy's apartment. And they run upstairs, they knock down the door, and the Radiant is just sitting there in front of the apartment. And they say, don't touch it, wait for contaminant. So you've got the Radiant just sitting there. Now, the interesting thing is that you see Nancy's apartment completely empty. No one's there, no idea where she is. So something might have happened. But on the final panel of the page, you have this letter addressed to Marshall saying, deliver on, and we don't see the date because it looks like there's a coin on top of it. So we've got some Back to the Future shit going on where Marshall has got this letter that's set to be delivered on a certain date. What is the letter about? No idea. Will the letter get delivered to Marshall? No idea. But that is pretty much where the issue ends. And like I said, issue 36 was, I will admit, kind of a tearjerker, kind of an emotional one. Following a character like Nancy was quite the treat because, like I said, she's been through something that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, or someone that you probably know who's been through a very similar thing. But this issue was fantastic, from the writing to the artwork, all down to a T, fantastic. And next month in September is a brand new story arc at the start of Radiant Black with issue 37. And I do wonder where this is going to go moving forward, because I get the feeling that this letter is definitely going to play a major role moving forward within like the next story arc or two, or probably in the next story arc, no doubt about it. So if whoever this mysterious group has the Radiant is, whether it's that government agency we saw at the end of last month's issue has the Radiant, then that could be a huge game changer. But no idea what happened to Nancy and what she probably saw with the powers of the Radiant. But she's aware of Marshall and she sent a letter out to him, so we'll see where that goes. We'll see where that goes. But overall, like I said, Radiant Black issue 37, or not 37, 36 was amazing, and I can't wait to see where the series is going to go next. So with that said, I will catch you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye.